Welcome everybody. My name is Johanna Scherf. I will guide you through the event this evening. So welcome to our event on the situation for refugees on the Canary Islands and on the Atlantic Sea. And we decided to do this event since we have seen a rise in arrivals via the Atlantic route since the end of 2020 already and the beginning of 2021, with deteriorating conditions for people who are stuck in the camps. And so before we start now, I'd like to give you some background information on this evening and like a rough overview on our plan for the evening. You can ask questions anytime in written form, please, in the chat. And we will collect your questions. You can also write them in German. We will translate them for you. And we will have enough time in the end for a question and answer session. So where we will all pose all of your questions, like depending on the time, to our speakers. So if you like to address a certain person of our speakers, please also include the name in your question. And this event could be realized thanks to the Bildungswerk Berlin der Heinrich Böll Stiftung in cooperation with a lot of other Stiftungen, foundations like the Heinrich Böll Stiftung Sachsen-Anhalt, Hamburg, der Stiftung Leben und Umwelt, Heinrich Böll Stiftung Niedersachsen, Heinrich Böll Stiftung Rheinland-Pfalz und the Petra Kelly Stiftung. Okay, before we start with introducing our speakers for today, we will start with a documentary that was made by one of our speakers, Egen, hi Till, recorded on Tenerife between March and April 2021.
Mais tout savez la situation de l'Afrique. C'est pourquoi on a risqué notre vie, passer dans la mer et venir en Espagne. On a 14 jours dans la mer et notre essence est finie, la nourriture, l'eau, tout est fini.
What I see in Moria, this is exactly the same thing. This is small, but it's growing up the horror, and it's coming.
Quieren convertir esto en una cárcel, la cárcel de Europa.
Y hay mucha gente que ha muerto en el camino, lo que llega a tener que ver su suerte y su derecho.
Ici, c'est pas nos places. Nous sommes des mineurs. C'est la place des mayores.
Creo que lo más importante es entender la situación en la que estas personas han venido. Una vez entiendes eso, es súper fácil que te salga el querer ayudar y poder colaborar de cualquier forma.
So this year, they come about 20,000 of migrants to Canary Islands. They came to Gran Canaria, Fuerteventura and Tenerife, and they closed all the space that they could stay. So now they're staying here and in another camp in Las Canteras.
Most of people are staying here for 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
Then they appear new problems, not also physical problems, also, as she said, mental problems that is very difficult for us to treat them.
The number of nurses and doctors is very, very low. The amount of people is increasing, and the government doesn't care about that.
Bienvenidos a la escuela. ¿Sí? Hola.
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 Et puis voilà, on est, comme on dit ici, on est si près et si loin, non, entre les Canaries et l'Afrique. On est à 100 km à peu près, mais là, c'est comme s'ils n'existaient pas. On tourne le dos aux Africains.
What I feel and I find very incredible is that they are days and days here with humidity, clothes wet, nothing to eat, nothing to drink, but they still keep smiling. So I think they are superhumans and they are more than me, because probably any of us, European people, probably if you stay for 3-4 days here, you will be really sick and you cannot do nothing.
Necesitan comida, necesitan abrigo, necesitan apoyo emocional, necesitan también de que se pueda denunciar la situación en la que están dentro, y también porque mañana por la noche habrá una deportación y se van a llevar muchos senegaleses y todavía no saben a cuál, y están todos muy preocupados por eso.
Nous sommes fatigués. Nous sommes venus ici depuis lors. On n'a pas vu rien.
Il y a 6 mois, on est ici.
Dans 6 mois, on est ici. On a besoin de travail. Parce que Sénégal, il n'y en a pas de travail. Parce que notre président, il a fait de vendu la mer des autres Européens.
Vale, entonces me corta él y luego te corta a ti en su lugar. Mohamed.
Muy bien.
Bon appétit.
I was not born here. 40 years ago, I arrived to the islands. I don't know how many thousand kilometers made their life in the sea looking for working. So what are we doing if we put them inside a hull without hope? They are claiming for freedom.
Las mujeres que están llegando a Canarias están quedándose, entre otros recursos, en la antigua prisión Tenerife 1. Se las está obligando a realizar unas pruebas de ADN para demostrar que sus hijas son sus hijas, las cuales están tardando meses y se las sigue teniendo retenidas.
Quiero terminar con lo que unas compañeras de Guinea-Conakry nos dijeron lo siguiente: las violencias, los gobiernos y las fronteras nos silencian. Nosotras caminamos el mundo y nosotras no nos vamos a callar. Muy bien.
This was a very intense first impression of the situation, and strong images, and yeah. Before we get more detailed into the topic and start talking about the film, I'd like to introduce our speakers more closely to you. First of all, welcome to Egen is the former media coordinator of Sea-Watch and an independent filmmaker who spent 7 months on the Canary Islands, witnessing and documenting the overall situation just on the ground. Welcome to. Hi. And also, we'd like to welcome Paola. Paola is member of the NGO Alarm Phone and part of the Western Mediterranean and Atlantic regional team of Alarm Phone and of the Welcome to EU networks. Hi, Paola. And also we'd like to welcome Fanni. Fanni Bihari is the specialist for flight and asylum in the team of Erik Marquardt, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but we're very grateful that Fanni jumped in, who also has a lot of expertise. She accompanies the EU-Parliament's Home Affairs Committee, and also in Budapest, she worked as a volunteer in initial reception at train stations and later worked on asylum cases and integration issues while studying in Berlin, and mostly did advocacy work on these issues in Brussels. So welcome. Yeah, we'd like to start with you, Till, since you're responsible for this impressive video. So you have spent 7 months on the Canary Islands documenting the events between the end of 2020 until July this year. Can you tell us about why you went there and about your first impressions?
Okay, hello, first of all. Thanks for the opportunity to show the film. It hasn't been seen so much by so many people so far, so I'm very glad that this is another opportunity so more people could see it. Thanks for that. So yeah, when I first heard that there's saw media reports that there's an increasing number of people arriving on the islands, especially on Gran Canaria and Tenerife, I decided to pack my bags and go and see firsthand and document firsthand what is actually happening there. For what I could understand just before I left Berlin, the media work there wasn't going to be easy because press and reporters, even people with press IDs, weren't let through to speak directly to refugees, as well as some organizations that were there. So I decided not to fly directly to Tenerife or Gran Canaria. I went to the island of La Palma, which is a little bit more quiet, so there weren't many arrivals until then. So I was on La Palma, basically watching the situation from there, ready to take a ferry over to Tenerife and Gran Canaria, which I then did in a few weeks after, at the beginning of 2021. And what I saw there was like a great disorganization and chaos. There was people on the port of Egen sleeping there on the concrete for weeks partially, and with very little assistance and very inhumane conditions. And it was very difficult to navigate through, and there was a lot of journalists running around trying to get through to the people, to get firsthand information. So in Egen, there was, like I said, there was this port, but then soon the Red Cross stepped in and started to get to put people in hotels which were empty due to the COVID crisis. And so that ended up being a win-win situation for the tourism sector there, because people could actually be housed in these facilities that were ready. Yeah.
Okay, so which islands did you go to and cover in your research? Not only Tenerife.
So I started off on Tenerife, where when I arrived, there was large protests going on basically every day against the inhumane conditions in the camp of Las Raíces, which is the biggest camp on the Canaries. And when I arrived, there was approximately 700, 800 people, and partially sleeping on the floor just with blankets. Conditions were really bad. The food was really bad. There was people that were partially mentally sick, and people who got even kicked out of this camp formed a protest camp outside of Las Raíces, which is located on Tenerife right next to the airport. and it's, you know, you might assume that, you know, Tenerife sounds like a warm place to be, where, you know, you can, you know, sleep at night comfortably and even outside. And it's definitely not. At this part of the island, it's very humid at night and it gets very cold. And obviously, right next to the airport, it's also very windy and noisy. So this facility, Las Raíces, became in the following weeks while I was there, quickly very overcrowded, spiking in more and more protests, and also resulting in the fact that the protest camp outside of Las Raíces on a parking lot across the road basically became increasingly full. There was obviously conflicts because people, you know, were in mentally unstable conditions, and you know, had to bear these conditions there. And yeah, so over the time, as the protests sparked, I also went to different camps. For example, Las Canteras, which is a camp on Tenerife, also on a different part of the island where most of the miners are kept. And I also went to Tenerife Uno, which is a former prison that was used to house vulnerables and women and families. And around each of these centers, reception centers and camps, there was basically constantly protests against the conditions. And yeah, I also went to, so this was the film you just saw. It's basically showing, you know, basically giving feedback also on what I just outlined. I also did another film on the situation on Gran Canaria, where after the people were moved from the docks of Agenigin to hotels where they could live quite comfortably for a while, being housed by hoteliers and which all paid for by the Red Cross. So like I said in the beginning, this was a win-win situation for the tourism sector there, because people the employees of the hotels could be kept during the COVID crisis, and also the maintenance costs were covered by the Red Cross, and a lot of people didn't have to stay on the streets, which was obviously a humanitarian need. And as people or refugees from the camps, from the hotels the hotels started getting closed down and people were moved to Las Raíces. There was to Tenerife, from Gran Canaria. There was, sorry, there's the fire truck coming through. As they were moved to Tenerife and the hotels were closed down, many people ran away to try to avoid getting moved to Las Raíces, because word had spread that the conditions there were really bad, and a lot of people were on the road. So even some hoteliers and some hotel organizations decided to even take the people back. And I've spent 2 days and 2 nights in a hotel in the south of Gran Canaria, a hotel called Puerto Calma, which name is quite significant in this, where a British hotelier and his wife decided to take in people from the street that had ran off in order to avoid getting moved to Las Raíces, and were housing them on their own expenses and own cost, which was a great humanitarian act in my eyes. And also the film that we might post a link also here later is already out.
Wow. So yeah, thank you for rounding it up a bit, for giving an overview. So you probably did plenty of interviews, like we also saw in the film, with many different people, like with activists, but also with the people who are stuck on the Canaries, and especially in Las Raíces. What did they tell you?
Well, as what one could see in the film, there was I spoken to many Senegalese fishermen of all ages, like ranging from up to like from 15 years up to almost 60 years, that had left Senegal because claiming that their president had sold the fishing rights to certain European countries as well as the Chinese. They were emptying the waters of the coastline of Senegal. Now, one must understand that 1/3 of Senegal is the population there is dependent on fishing. So, and it's also quite a cultural thing. So, you know, the fishermen would go out in large crews of 20 people on these boats and go catch fish, and they would come back basically with nothing, or just small fish that they would have to throw back in the water. So overfishing is definitely a large problem. Also along the coast, Morocco and even Portugal, and where the local fishermen just can't get anything out of the water anymore. I've spoken also to many Moroccans, especially young Moroccans that were in the, you know, were working, selling stuff to tourists on the beach, or you know, like all up and down the coast, depending on the tourism there, which obviously due to COVID has broken down. So yeah, the large economical pressure there has caused also many people to flee. One must say, which Paola will probably talk a little bit more in detail later, that the SAR zone, the search and rescue zone between Mauritania, or even Senegal, down at the coast, all the way up to the Canaries, is huge. It's compared to the Mediterranean SAR zone. When you look at Libya, between Libya and Malta and Italy, Lampedusa, is just a fragment of this zone. So so many many fishermen have just jumped on the boats that they can't use for fishing anymore, and make their way up. Their families giving them all their belongings, all their valuables, and put full faith into their kids, and send them to Europe with hope that something comes back. They find a job in order to support their family.
Maybe shortly, like for everyone, a SAR zone is like a search and rescue area. It's like the short word for it. Yeah. Okay. So you also got a bit already into the causes for people coming there, and also for the recent rise in numbers. What we also were, what I was also thinking about is like the video, the situation that was depicted in the video and what you described has been from spring this year. Can you tell us how the situation has developed since then and how it is now?
Yeah, what I hear from local activists on Tenerife, especially around the camp of Las Raíces, was that in the beginning of July, a lot of people, like over half of the people staying in Las Raíces, were moved to the mainland peninsula, to Spain. And now the camp is being, the structure of the camp is being extended, which means, you know, there's a large amount of people arriving currently, a lot more people than during the same time in 2020. So when you look at the numbers at the beginning of this year and the numbers at the beginning of 2020, there's only 2 times somewhere in February and July where there's actually more people arrived last year. So this year there's even going to be more people coming. The curve is already going up now compared to last year. The numbers are already quite high, and are expected to surge, to rise drastically in the winter month, which is kind of counterintuitive because most boats leaving in winter, the conditions get worse, the waves get bigger, the winds get stronger. and also what's been seen is that that a lot of boats that are now leaving to reach the Canaries are now to be found rubber boats and not the big wooden fishing boats that you would see like last year. But now there's a lot of very, very, very unstable, unsafe boats in the water, and yeah, people trying to make the crossing on these in these huge distances is dramatic, and there definitely needs to be something done this winter to help these people.
Probably the number with how many people are on the boat varies very much as well, right?
That varies according to the size of the boat, and yeah, so anything between 100 and 350 people, even more. I've heard, and I've even spoken to some people around the camp of Las Raíces. Some people that left from Mauritania. They have spent almost 14 days on the water, but I think on average it's 3 to 7 weeks. But Paola might be able to say more about that.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you, Till. Maybe that's a good starting point, Paola, to learn a bit about how alarm phone operates. Maybe you can explain us what alarm phone exactly does and how you're operating.
First of all, thank you to invite me. I'm very happy to be here this evening. Phone, we are a hotline for people in distress at sea. But we also receive a lot of call of families looking for their loved one because any of the European states are doing neither this task. So the Canary Island route is very particular because, as Till said, they don't long distances. They use Sarson, but also because people don't have with them satellite phones like used to be used in other routes, like people in the Central Med. So if you have a satellite phone, every moment you are in distress, you can call someone, you can call a relative, you can call Coast Guard. But in this route, that the people, they just have normal phones, they are it's a lack of coverage in the whole route. So it's impossible to even now or start to think the amount of boats that are lost on the route because there is no possibility to communication with anyone, no?
Yeah.
So most of the calls we receive in the Canary route are friends and relatives that once the boat's supposed to arrive and didn't arrive, they call us because they know they had a problem. So what we do is to collect all the information and just to be able to inform Salvamento, that is the responsibility, how do you say, the authority on the area, because we are going to see later a map of the Spanish Sarson on the Canaries. So there is no other authority responsible because Morocco shouldn't have authority on the Western Sahara area because it's you know that it's a place, it's a territory that was part of Spain and it's in process of being yeah, thank you. So
there we can see it now, yeah.
Yeah, you can see you have Morocco, you have Western Sahara, and you can see this orange area. That means that because the Sarson is just an area that the government informed the responsibility authority, that is IMO, they inform them, okay, we are going to be responsibility, we are going to take care of this area. So all this orange, it's a is an area that both Spain and Morocco are saying they are responsible. But as you can see, it doesn't make sense that the country that is, how can I say, recolonize the Sahara, because Spain we just abandoned them and Morocco take advantage. Well, actually, we agreed to Morocco to leave them the Western Sahara, but it's not legal. So it's they are in the colonization process. So, in my opinion, all this area, all the overlapping zone is Spanish responsibility. Because Morocco has nothing to be there. And you have a huge, you need 24 hours in a boat, in a salvamento boat, more than 25 hours to arrive to the south of the Sarson. So
in
imagine
the salvamento boat.
Yes.
Okay.
Imagine a fishing boat from Senegal. How?
Yeah.
So as Till was talking before, we have many different routes coming from different places to the Canary. You have the route from Mauritania, Senegal, and even from Gambia. As he said, are big fishing boats that people cannot use it anymore for fish. So they use it to come to Spain, to try to reach Europe, as they have no other thing to do with that boat. We also have many boats departing from the south. This boat used to have at least 100 people. Others, they have 200, depending, as he said also about the measure of the boat. You also have boats departing from the south of the of the Sahara, Western Sahara, Dakla, Bojador. So they are also fishing boats, but Moroccan ones, they are smaller, and they used to have around 40, 50 people on board. And you have the new develop in the area, they say that the new way to cross, that is this rubber boat we used to see on the Central Med before. We have never saw that here before in the Atlantic route. It's something new. They are totally overcrowded. Too many people on board, and they are not good boats, no good engines. So this boat used to depart from the area just in front of the Canary Islands. So it's just one day week. But the conditions are really bad of those boats. So sometimes it's even more difficult to arrive on those boats, just one day trip to the Canary, than from a good boat from Senegal. They used to you can take 5 days if everything is okay. But as Till said before, I also was talking to people in Canary saying they have been spent 14, 15 days at sea. And they have, there is a very nice movie that I really recommend you. It's called The Pirogue. It's an old movie. But you will understand perfectly what is a trip from Senegal to the Canary Islands. It's from the 2016, but it's still the same.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for the recommendation. That sounds like very, very dangerous, just very dangerous for people to cross, and explains also why this is called the deadliest route to take, actually.
Maybe one more number to this that I heard from the beginning of last year. 1 out of 16 people dies trying to cross through this Saar zone. This is an estimate on the numbers we have now, but of course there might be a lot more boats leaving, like going through the Saar zone, which are never found and never looked for. So just to add that.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, you explained already that the SAR area is huge. So
you have to imagine that the Salvamento Marítimo just operates on the area surrounding the island. Salvamento Marítimo never goes to the south. No, neither by plane, neither by boat, just in case that a fishing boat, we have an area, a couple of areas with a lot of fishing boats that they used to alert Salvamento Marítimo about the boats, also merchant boats that have done many rescues. This summer. We had this summer 2 boats that had been rescued, 3 boats that had been rescued after 14 days at sea. They departed from Dakhla, that is 300 kilometers from the Canaries, and they had been rescued 300 kilometers but to the south, almost near Mauritania. 1 boat arrived to Mauritania by herself. They were adrift. They just they get lost. Gasoline just it's over, so people is adrift for many days. And now we have the Alisios. This is the north winds. So they are pushing people to the south. And once they arrive to the south, you have this how do you say in English? This also another kind, the wind on the sea that you go to the Caribbean. So we have 2 boats that arrived to the Caribbean this year.
Oh, wow.
On the Canarian route, yes, because it's a circle. They can go to the Caribbean and come back again.
But that takes very long, probably.
Imagine the suffering of the people being there.
Yeah.
It's inhumane. It's insane.
Yeah, must be extremely scary. But like, how does it work concretely? If you get a call, what happens next?
Here in the Canaries, it's really easy because we don't used to be in touch with the people on the boat because of the lack of the coverage. So normally we talk to Salvamento, we keep calling the people on board, we keep calling relatives to try to look for information, we call people we know in Morocco and Western Sahara, trying to figure out if a boat came back by herself, it could be the boat we're looking for, trying to reach Morocco also to see if they intercepted a boat. Most of the time is trying to look for the boat because it's if you don't have a GPS position, even Salvamento wanted to go to look for them. Where should I go? In each huge area.
So can you explain a bit more the role of Salvamento or your way of cooperating with them?
Sí, a ver, un momento. A ver, Salvamento, I think it's very important to say that they are the only one civil and public rescue agency we have in Europe. And that should be an example for all the European states. But what we are doing with them is to now the Spanish government in what they did on the 2018 was to militarize this civil agency. And now Guardia Civil, that is a military police, they are in charge of the rescue operation in the whole Spanish SAR, not just in the Canary. All the rescues concerning migration is the Guardia Civil, the one in charge.
Okay.
So everything changed a lot since 2018. At least in the Canary, we keep working with Salvamento Marítimo and collaborating in a very good way because they are always up to look for a boat. They are always up over it. They cannot do a lot because it's a very big area, but they are always helpful. They're always trying to look for them, even with Guardia Civil. I talk many times with them, and I feel that they really want to find the people and they really want to take out the people at sea as fast as possible. But also, in the other hand, we have to say that the Spanish government also make a huge, how do you say, stop giving money to Salvamento Marítimo. So they have no people to work on it.
Okay.
They are doing a huge work, the people on the boats, but a huge work. I have friends working there, and they maybe can be rescue a boat, go, come back. They can be like this for 2 days. They make this shift for a week. I think it's 2 weeks working, 2 weeks without work. And sometimes they are all the day going and coming back.
Without break.
Because there is no boat. If you have 3 boats in each island or 5 boats, because you also need boats for other things. It's an island. Other things can happen. So Spanish government last summer brought, I think was 2 boats or 3 with people, with crew, but now they come back to the mainland. So they have people from a trade union in Salvamento, the CGT, the CGT. They have a hashtag on Twitter. They just ask for more hands to save more lives. They don't want money. They just want more hands to save more lives. But it's not what is happening. The Spanish government actually is doing the opposite.
Okay,
very sad that we really have something good that should be treated with love, let's say that, and they are not receiving not even enough people to work.
So you have already answered one of the next questions would be like, what do you think should be done, like, or what measures would be required to help more people?
All right. For me, the most effective measure to avoid all this death at sea is to abolish the deadly European border regime. If you do that, no more death at sea, of course. But we also can stop because the right of movement should be for everyone, not just for us. So if people has not the right to move wherever they want, as we have, they are going to keep trying to come here by these insane or deadly trips and very, very dangerous trips. No, another good thing we can do while we abolish the border regime, could be to stop externalizing our borders to countries as Morocco. That is not really democratic country. They have a war, with the people on the Western Sahara that they don't want to be Moroccan, and they are fighting. And Spain are allowing that Morocco rescue people on their SAR zone and bring them back to a war zone, because right now there is a war on the Western Sahara. So it's for me, this is a very important thing to understand that, okay, Spain have the responsibility to coordinate a rescue on the SAR zone. That's all. They don't have to rescue. But to perform and rescue, the people have to arrive to a safe harbor. And I don't think La June or Dakla is right now a safe harbor to disembark people, no? Also this year, we have many cases where Morocco just left people at sea during the rescue. Many.
Okay.
One woman was rescued by Salvamento Marítimo. After that, because not even Salvamento Marítimo trusts Morocco. We have a guy from Salvamento that made an interview on Spanish newspaper saying that even Morocco, because Spain always asks Morocco, okay, are you gonna go to rescue? If they say no, it's when Salvamento starts working. But not even after those cases we have with people just left at sea, Salvamento start to go to rescue. Even Morocco said they will go have a look, rescue, and send him back to Morocco or to Western Sahara. That also can be call it as a pushback, because they were already, they was not on the territorial waters, of course, but they were in the responsibility area for Spain. So if you have a Spanish boat looking the rescue, just in case they leave someone on the water, I don't know. If you are there, you should try to bring the people to the place they want to go, not to the place they just fled away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Okay, so I also read in the Alarmphone report that was published that, like, yeah, you said like the funding was taken from Salvamento Maritimo, while the Moroccan side even received funds from the European Union.
This is the border externalization. We give you money, you take migrant to Morocco. But also when people arrive to Morocco after the sea, when they have been intercepted by the Moroccan Navy, they are put in jail, in detention centers with no food, with no water, with nothing. Women, children, sick people, and most of them are deported to their countries. So I have a friend who lives in Western Sahara who used to go to the hospital to give food to the people just rescued, because they don't give anything to them. They just put them in jail, or they go to the hospital, but they don't give them anything. Imagine that have even people in Spain, when they arrive to the Canary, he can tell you there is no psychologist for the people at all. They are not lawyers. I met thousands of Malians when I was in Arguineguín. I was preparing asylum interviews to the people. Most of the people I have, because they have no lawyer, they didn't know they have the right to seek asylum. So we were doing that there, explaining to the people that there is a right to seek asylum. And we were asking people, and I would say that 90% of the people I was talking with, Malian people, they had attacks, terrorist attacks on their village. And at least 50% of the people I was talking to, some of their relatives or friends had been killed by terrorists. And those people were in the Canary Islands without any idea about what asylum is.
Okay, so there were like, any kind of legal support lacking, or any other support which would have been like
no, because it's not just to give me food, it's not that to give me bed, that they don't give good food, they don't give good bed, but people, imagine someone, I have been talking to a lady who was for 14 days at sea and rescued me in Mauritania like a month ago. So this person, what she needs is to go as soon as possible with her families in Europe. One of the ladies was two ladies. One, she has family in France. Her mom is living in France. And the other lady, her sister is living in the Spanish mainland, here in the peninsula. So why these people after a month still there without any kind of legal assistance, with any kind of psychological assistance after 14 days at sea, eating nothing and drinking seawater? I don't understand how the Spanish government is managing the situation in the Canaries. I don't really got it.
Yeah, that sounds like it's very obvious what people would need, and still it's all not provided.
It's easy to buy a plane ticket.
Yeah.
Now the borders are open. The borders, I mean, to take a flight from the Canaries to the mainland. If you have a passport or you apply to seek asylum, you can travel with the asylum document or with your passport because it's not a border. There is no any border. It's the same country. But the Spanish government wasn't allowing people to travel. I think they start traveling again. I don't remember, but they were like, maybe Phil knows better, but they were like almost a year stuck on the island without any possibility of really take a plane. They are in the same country. What they need to travel? Why, if I can travel with my ID, why they can't? Why they don't? It's just to, they want. My feeling is that the only interesting thing for them is to make people suffering more. So they can talk to their families in their countries that, oh no, don't come to Spain, they don't treat you well. That is the only important thing. When Tino was talking about the Las Raíces, and you have to imagine that on the 2016, the 06, we have the same problem in the Canaries. A lot of people arrive and they put the camp exactly on the same place. They put it on the 06. They have a lot of problem there because it's the most humidity place on the Canary Islands. It's raining a lot. You have always water into the tent. So why you put again this on the same place where you have that people is not going to be comfortable at all? It's already happened once. That was people were saying there when I was there, and I'm like, okay, again in the same place. Why? To make.
May I add to this that the location where it's a former military camp where they set up the structures for Las Raíces, and I think it was the end of the 70s, beginning of the 90s, 80s. There was a large plane crash on Tenerife, and they put the dead bodies into this military complex where now Las Raíces is, and they kept the bodies there for a long time to identify them. And many of this story has spread throughout the camp, and many people are very religious, and so this is even contributes to that this place is really like, it feels really haunted. It's very cold. It's very dark. It's like a forsaken place, and also when you, Paola, you talked about the externalization of borders. I think we need to talk about Ceuta and Melilla as well, as well as the Canaries, where people are kept in these, what I would call like migration traps, where conditions are fostered to be as worse as possible. So people text home or write home or whatever that not more people should come. So it's a calculated thing that the EU does in these cases, and it's horrible, and it's very inhumane, and it just shouldn't continue like this.
Okay, so yeah, what you two pointed out is that it's quite an intentional thing that people have to stay in these conditions and to prevent others from coming.
Claro, yeah. You have to imagine that in Spain mainland we have thousands of empty places for migrants. Thousands of empty places already paid to the NGOs because, there is a subventions from the state to the NGOs, to the Red Cross, to the FAIR, Accent, whatever. So the government pay, let's say, 100 places on the mainland. There, no?
Mm-hmm.
So we have 20 migrants or 50 migrants in mainland, and we can still having 50 more places that they already paid. So why you have the people waiting on Arguineguín in the harbor, sleeping on the floor for 14, 15 days?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense at all. Why you pay all these people to be on the hotels if you have a space on the migration camps on the mainland? Because they also are playing with the with extreme right parties.
Mm-hmm.
It's a play also, because they know that the fascist people are going to start talking, oh, this migrant now in hotels like they were tourists, blah, 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 blah. And they start to create this bad environment that I think you saw that on the island when you were there. You were there for a lot of time.
I think that's a good, last point you made also is a good point to include Fanni now in our discussion. Fanni, maybe you can tell us a bit about the side of the European Parliament. What was the reaction from the Parliament on the rising numbers of refugees on the Canary Islands, the conditions people have to live in there, and the rising death toll in the Zari area?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for inviting us. And by us, I mean my boss, Eric, who I'm representing now, but just as a disclaimer, I'm not talking for him. Like, what I say is obviously our shared political opinion, but I would want to make sure that this is not Eric talking in the form of a blonde girl, but it's me talking as his advisor. When it comes to the questions, I don't want to ignore the conversation that happened before. So I want to somehow go back a bit to what Till and Paola were saying about this intentional rhetoric. And I think they're absolutely right. But what I would add to it is that it's not only an intentional way of making people suffer way more than necessary, it's also completely bogus. Like, let's not pretend like this works. I think it's absolutely hubris to think that by making conditions horrible, you're discouraging people from getting on boats. You're treating people like they're idiots. No one would sit on a boat and risk their life if they thought there was an easier or better way. If you sat on a boat like this, or if you even saw a boat like this, you would know that by bad reception conditions, you cannot keep someone away from leaving a place of absolute purposeness. There were many studies showing that people's decision-making is rational when it comes to irregular migration. Their risk assessment is accurate, their decision-making is solid, and they know what they're signing up for in the sense of risking their lives for a better tomorrow. What they get afterwards is this loop of populist discourse and this ridiculous thing of pull factor that actually just doesn't work. And when people, and by people I mean countries, are spending their DACable money, which is development cooperation funding, on discouraging third country nationals from coming to their countries by hanging posters how bad Norway is or stuff like that, I just get really pissed. But coming back to your question of what the European Parliament does, well, we do a lot of different things. The impact is always different, but when it comes to the Canary situation, Eric is a member of the LIBE Committee, the Civic Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee of the European Parliament, which is basically the interior stuff, home affairs. When the situation on the Canary Islands was escalating again, and just in a bracket, our chair of the committee is actually from the Canaries, funny enough. He's the former Minister of Justice of Spain and also comes from that area. So he's also always talking on these issues. There was a LIBE hearing on the 1st of March. You can find it online as well. There was the head of SIR, the Spanish Immigration Refugee Network, the member of the European Council on Refugees and Exiles. There was also the president of the Canaries invited, as well as Ylva Johansson, the Commissioner for Home Affairs, discussing the situation on the island. Obviously, they all brought a different point of view. And I think our job as European parliamentarians is to somehow make sure that the evidence gets to the ivory tower. Like, that we don't let all these numbers and all these catchphrases, deadliest route, every 16th person dies. All these things are very sad and true, but I think what we have to do via these hearings to avoid it from just being blah, blah, is to somehow link it to ongoing policy processes. Because at the end of the day, we're there to create legislation that in a normal setup should make these situations better. So with the ongoing reform of the Common European Asylum System, I think what we've tried to do as well is to link in these ongoing situations like Lesbos, like Lampedusa, like the Canaries, to the reform of the Common European Asylum System. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That was already a very good start, I would say. I mean, you told us now a bit about how what the European Parliament should do in this, and so what would you say? What has to be done so the situation on the Canaries won't escalate even more? I mean, there have already been drawn parallels to Moria, but what do you think should be done that the situation won't escalate anymore?
I mean, I think we're stuck in a bit of a loop, as discussed by the previous speakers as well. There has been this discourse after the 2015 so-called refugee crisis again of how immigration doesn't serve the interest of our societies, which is obviously not even true. So I think the first and utmost thing to do is to actually start talking evidence-based. I mean, human rights are important, and obviously they should form our legislative work. But when it comes to proposals and when it comes to discussions, it would be great if it had anything to do with the reality of this complicated issue. If we were building bridges with this much evidence, they would collapse. And I know this sounds also a bit catchphrasy, but it's really outrageous to see that there is an institution trying to create new policies that are based on, and I'm sorry for my French, bullshit. It would be really great if evidence bases came into discussion. Let's start from the very end of the whole thing. Migration and development nexus. The relationship is not give them money so they stop migrants. That's not development cooperation. Development actually induces migration in the beginning. Of course it does. It's already the privileged people who can leave. And of course, I'm not questioning here the horrendous circumstances. I'm just saying that the poorest remain and starve at home. So those who leave already have a bit of a benefit. If you put money into a country and you create actual sustainable development, it will in the short term induce migration. Of course it will. That's the European idea as well. I'm from Hungary. I migrated to Germany. I studied. I came to Brussels. That's what economic migration should be in a way. Then stepping away from, so conditionalizing development cooperation and externalizing our border protection on third countries that are funny is not a sustainable approach. Then when you get one step closer to what's going, also root causes. We always talk about the root causes of migration. What are the root causes of migration? There's so many, but let's divide asylum from migration. Let's talk about what the EU should do to avoid conflict. Well, it should do conflict prevention. Mm-hmm. Instead of avoiding these touchy issues because we don't have a common foreign and security policy, we should be in there actually putting money and real expertise into preventing conflict rather than creating it. And when it comes to what happens on our borders, well, that's when human rights come into play. We have an obligation vis-a-vis people who arrive. Irrelevant of how they came, people need access to protection. The right to asylum doesn't mean anything unless a person can actually normally access protection. You need legal routes. No one should have to come on a boat for 15 days in a horrible sea path to get to a place where they deserve protection. There should be legal pathways for refugees. There should be a possibility for a person to go to an embassy or to go to an organization and say, hey, I need help. Mm-hmm. And they should get a humanitarian visa. And then they should be able to come here safely and in a dignified fashion. They've already been through enough. No one wants to leave their home. It's not fun. And then when it comes to legal migration for people who are working here, we need work. We need people who actually do jobs in the EU that we don't have enough people to do. So give them visas. It's not that complicated. There are so many ways to give people legal access. It's not only IT people we need. It's so much more than that. And then I didn't even talk about our responsibility when it comes to all kinds of colonial stuff that I think I don't want to go into at this moment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we need to start, sorry, the one last sentence, mm-hmm. so that after a person has been given a dignified, normal way to either get protection or a job, we need integration. And it cannot be integration like, hey, come here, you get an apartment, you should learn French now and start behaving like us. No, it should be a two-way process. Let's open our whatevers we have to different cultures. Let's try to somehow make it a bit of an open story so that people feel welcome and they will take up what's good in our societies and we can take over what's good in their culture. And then we can have a sustainable, and I know it sounds like I'm from Candyland, but yeah, these are the basics, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I point out that these invent things, but there's already there is already legal ways which should exist. Like, this is nothing we have to invent, but they are very easy to they would be easy to implement in theory.
I only heard the second half of your, I mean, I was
okay
at the beginning, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat, probably the others didn't hear either. I said, like, it's interesting that you pointed out that this is nothing we have to invent, but that there is already like legal ways or ways how people could arrive in European countries safely, and that this is nothing which has to be invented or where no one has a solution for, but the solutions are not that difficult or don't have to be invented anymore.
Well, I mean, I think it is difficult, and obviously we are failing all the time, so something is not there. You need political will, you need actual investment. And no, I don't necessarily believe that there are enough regular legal pathways for people to get here. If you're privileged, you can always get yourself a tourist visa somehow, but it's getting harder and harder. Like, Fortress Europe is very, very difficult to access at this point. Yeah. So I feel like even though I do believe that there is a decent enough system if implemented properly, and you don't need to reform it, you actually need to enforce it and implement it. There are many loops in the system, and one of them is actually humanitarian visas for asylum seekers to come here. So that is missing. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to our current development, I think it's a really bad reform proposal that was put on the table by the European Commission, which is actually the follow-up to a pre-existing really bad proposal put on the table. So, I mean, the problems are ancient, the solutions are statutorily accessible, but it is the shift in discourse, and it's a shift in the stories we tell. I mean, when was the last time we heard a positive story about immigration? There are so many and no one tells them. And as long as no one tells them and all that people's minds are, I mean, obviously it's not necessarily those people who are already well informed, but if all you hear in your everyday life are the negative stories about terrorism, about rape, about suffering, about all that, instead of hearing the hundreds and hundreds of people actually paying taxes, working, establishing families, going home, there's so many facts that we don't know. A person, and I'm just going to say two just for fun, a person with a long-term residency permit is much more likely to go home than a person with temporary permits. Why? Because you can come back. It's security. It's easy. That's what Schengen is also trying to achieve. Also, a person with migration background is much more likely to pay taxes than a person with a national background. People just contribute to either society. They send more money home than development cooperation achieves. So I think there is a win-win in migration, and we're making it a lose-lose, and that's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, it's yeah, makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that this that there's also this kind of imbalance of the stories which are told and which are which people are more aware of. So what options do you see actually for the EU to deal with these, like what do you think can be done by the European Union?
Well, I mean, I work at the Parliament, right? We work on proposals. So I think what I'm the most sad about is the Commission not taking its role as an initiator seriously. They have two important roles in this union of ours. One of them is the guardian of the treaty. Which treaty? I mean, I'm sorry, but this treaty is based on human rights, fundamental freedoms. One of them is the right to asylum. So I think if they took it upon themselves to actually push governments to behave better, if there was a conditionality, we have so many other kinds of conditionalities. Why don't we have a conditionality of funding on human rights and proper monitoring? And the other one is to initiate proposals on the basis of those same values. I mean, we don't need a reform, but if we have one, it should make things better. So, but I feel like MEPs like mine are doing a very important thing by reaching people with these stories. And Eric has a huge impact via social media because he tells all the stories that a lot of people in our circles know but don't have the reach to tell. So I think it's another thing that people have to do and take it upon themselves, this role of rapporteurship, so to say. And that's why I'm so happy to see a movie like this, because these are the things that reach people's interest in a way. And now with Afghanistan, we also see that.
Yeah. Thank you for like pointing out the thoughts, like with, for example, Til's movie, also the individual stories get more into people's minds, and yeah, sometimes that helps to make the situation more clear to people who haven't been there and haven't seen the situation themselves. Okay. Now I would like to ask you again, Paola and Till, do you have any questions to Fanni or to each other at the moment? Or Fanni, do you have any questions to Till or Paola?
Okay, I go. Fanni, one question to you, like saying these things about implementing certain policies, like how, apart from putting the right cross on the voting bill, how can this directly be achieved for our listeners to activate themselves in order to push for some of these solutions that you suggested?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the EU only gives a framework, and then there is openness to derogate upwards. So when it comes to, for instance, only what's going on in Germany, there are so many local and regional authorities opening their doors to people they want to sponsor, they want to receive. And as long as they're not prohibited by an interior minister who doesn't want more people, there should be an opportunity left for local and regional authorities to host immigrants if they feel like they're open to do so. I'm not a big fan of private sponsorship. I don't think people should be carrying the bill for immigrants, but I do think that the social and psychosocial aspect of integration should very well be much more community-based. No one should live in a camp. And not because a camp is shitty in Tenerife, because a camp is not a normal living scenario for a family or an individual. We should give people proper housing among us, so we interact, so we see each other. From my own background, coming from Hungary, where there was not much immigration before the system has changed, people were afraid because they never saw such a thing. Let it be a bit more organic, and you can do that by giving people the chance to make up their minds and help others because they can. And I do think that people want to help. I do think that communities, let it be religious or sports or any kind of friendship groups, they are open to such psychosocial aspects of integration. Let the state foot the bill, let the people do the helping. So I feel like such initiatives can actually get local politics moving, and local politics can get bigger politics moving. But maybe I'm too hopeful. But I do have a question to Paola, and namely, so I know that there are, I mean, I understand this is a huge search and rescue zone, but there are a lot of, for instance, Sea-Watch has these flights that go around in the Central Med, actually looking for boats. So do you guys have any, like, would it be helpful, for instance, in this case, to have these Überwachungsfliege, these like monitoring flights, to like, it's too big?
Oh, your phone is muted. Oh, yeah.
One of something that I think is very important is to have air asset here in the Canaries, because Salvamento is not patrolling, looking for boat. You should know that we have Guardia Civil in Mauritania and Guardia Civil, the Spanish militaries, in Senegal also. So they keep boat, they try both not to arrive to the Spanish Sarson, is their mission, to catch people on their way. But of course, are boats that are arriving to the Spanish Sarson, and also they are boats that I said before, they are pushing down with the north winds. So there is a huge area from North Mauritania until, I would say, Bojador, that is at least 400 kilometers, 300 kilometers from the Canaries, is a huge area that should be patrolled, but should be patronized, or how do you say, patrolling by plane, because a lot of boats are missing there.
Can I say something? Sorry.
Sure.
I think the one thing we never spoke about in this conversation of ours yet is these EU agencies that are supposed to take a role in either end of the whole asylum cycle. I mean, after having done a lot of work on Frontex lately, I don't have high hopes on them being the monitoring service, providing us with coordinates and helping people get rescued, because that's not what we experienced in the Egen. But I do think that instead of going on the lowest common denominator and letting EU agencies talk to militias like the Libyan Coast Guard, we should actually somehow try to make this into something progressive and get these supranational agencies to help us foster better human rights protection, for instance, via actually doing this aerial operation. They have the assets, they have the money, why don't they do it?
If I may add one thing about your question about the involvement of civil rescue assets from, for example, Sea-Watch. I think what needs to be avoided at any cost is that to drag the criminalization that Sea-Watch and other NGOs in the Mediterranean are facing, that where rescuers that actually saving lives. I mean, Sea-Watch has been taken part of rescuing, I think, over 50,000 people now, maybe even more. This could be an old number, but I think when in 2014, when Mare Nostrum was cancelled in the Central Med, and the civil actors such as Sea-Watch, etc., to rescue people, back then everything was, like quite chaotic there. And I think what needs to be avoided at any cost is that Salvamento Marittimo is facing the same criminalization that is going on in the Central Med, or even in the Aegean Sea, the crossing from Turkey to Greece, where now even refugees are being criminalized for losing relatives on the boat. I mean, there's this one case of Nadir. He's a 25-year-old person from Afghanistan who fled on the boat with his wife and her sick mother and his son. The boat hit the rocks at night, the boat flipped, and now they actually want to put him in jail because he was on the boat with his son. these conditions are like Europe is trying at any cost to stop the migration, throwing all values overboard, everything that we strive for, I think, in this round. And this is like, I think, a relevant fact when considering sending rescue assets such as like a Sea-Watch plane there, that the criminalization isn't dragged over to this situation. So yeah.
So what you pointed out.
I would like to add something.
Yeah, sure.
Concerning what you said, that Fanny said that I think that sea rescue must be civil and public. If it's military, it's not sea rescue. It's fighting against migration, and it's not the same. So if we have military agencies, they are not rescuing or helping people at sea. They are preventing people to arrive.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be the fact, right? This is only a byproduct.
Oh, they shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
They are militaries. It's gonna be like this, no?
But the last 5 sentences were the saddest things ever, right? We're trying to avoid further criminalization, and as such, avoiding civil aerial surveillance, and at the same time trying to discuss how military shouldn't be the arm of the state as it is. I mean, these are the same developments that we've all described before. These are also the direct result of a bad approach to this issue. I'm not saying these will shift. I'm just saying these are not like facts written in stone. These are developments that are completely screwed up. So there could be a military that isn't, and we did a study on human rights training to the Coast Guard. They basically don't get any. So this could be different. It just isn't. And that's where I could see an added value to a European Union, but instead I see the opposite.
I don't know. I think that the perfect thing or the perfect agency, we have it here in Spain, and it's called Salvamento Marítimo, that is people who save life at sea, independent of the color of the skin or the amount of money they have on their wallets. And it's not going to be the same. We can see when people are rescued by Guardia Civil here, the experiences they have is not the same experiences they have when Salvamento Marítimo rescue them. So I think that the way to go further is to have more Salvamento Marítimo in every European countries and don't have more Frontex in just on the other way around. It's not the same. How can be a military rescuing at sea? They are not prepared to do that. They are militaries. We become the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea, we become in a war against migration, because we have military there. So they are not rescuing, they are making war. Of course, they are not hurting people, but it's a war.
So you're pointing out like that actually it would not something like Frontex, but some instance like to support, to help, to spend more money on what now, for example, Sea-Watch is doing or Salvamento Marítimo is already doing, but that this should happen on a much, in a much bigger way. Is that kind of also what you saying, Fanny? Phrase it different.
I completely agree with what was said, obviously, by Paola. What I'm saying is that what the arm of the state does is designated by the state interest. And if the state interest was actually to uphold human rights, and we would not, all of us wouldn't have a job if we lived in an ideal world, right? We wouldn't make films about refugee camps or save people at sea or advocate for better policies because they wouldn't be an issue. I get that. But what I'm saying is, in an ideal setting, the interest of the state wouldn't be represented by the war against migration, but it would be represented by upholding dignity as the founding principle of this union that actually came out of the worst massacre in European history. So that's all I'm saying. But as an idea, I also believe that people shouldn't be saved by people in uniform. Traumatized people shouldn't be facing other people in uniform. I understand that and I subscribe to it completely. It re-traumatizes people. And that's the other thing we experience now, that it's not enough that a person has been through hell, they get re-traumatized upon arrival. And that's so outrageous. How can you put someone in front of a military interviewer if they just got out of a boat not having eaten or slept in 3 days? That's just inhumane, right?
But you know what is doing Frontex here in Spain, where people just rescue? I have been in harbors during rescues. So people arrive, we give them a bottle of water, some biscuits, that's all. Sometimes, depending on the volunteer, if there are people asking for more water and people saying that they don't want to give them more water, and they are civil, but it's a Red Cross here in Spain is just working with volunteers. So depending on the person who is going one day, the people are gonna have a kind of good experience or bad one. So after something, they take a shower and they have an interview with Frontex just to try to figure out the route they take, which migratory route they take. It can be done later. Imagine if they were militaries, the one rescued them, they will be doing these interviews just when they took them from the sea.
But I agree with you completely. Don't misunderstand me. I agree with you.
No. I just I don't say I don't think you are not agree with have civil people there and less Frontex. It's just to try to explain how they act here. They are just how do you say? Imagine to be rescued at sea and people start to asking you for half an hour, for 1 hour, or where do you depart, blah, 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 blah. So it's the only important thing for the European Union is to stop the migration. And I think that, I'm pretty sure that I don't think that a civil organization should be doing that work. Should be done by a state, of course, but they are not doing, so we have a lot of people doing that. But it's not a European people shouldn't be paying that. We pay that with our money given to the organization because the state are not doing that. And when they are doing that, they are doing with militaries, and it's not a rescue, it's a war.
Yeah, I guess we've just lost our moderation for this round.
I'm back, guys.
There she is.
I'm back. Okay, I just got the last sentences of Paola and also would like to go on now to the questions of our the people of our guests. So wait. The first question, Paola, was directed to you, and it says, how does the civilization react on the bad situation of the refugees? I had the impression they are in solidarity. Are local residents in solidarity?
Yes, as we saw on the movie till May, there are a lot of solidarity here also. We are in contact with people in Canary every day, like trying to help also people to come here to the mainland because they want to come to the La Gran Spain, they call the big Spain. Most of the people who arrive to the Canaries, they don't know they are in an island. The first thing we have to say to the people is, hey man, you are in an island, you cannot arrive to France, you need to take a plane or a boat. So I think that the people in the Canaries are doing a great job, but they have a lot of, we are not a rich country. Spain is not a rich country, so we would love to provide house and food for everyone to arrive and dignify their condition, but it's not possible. We have a very nice network that one person who arrived to the Canary, we can support their trip until they arrive to France. So
I would like to also like to add to that. I think to answer this question, it's, I must say, to better understand the demographics of the Canary Islands, about 20, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of people arrived from South America, from Venezuela and Cuba and Colombia, mainly, and a lot of people living on the Canaries descend from these refugees, and there's a lot of solidarity. If you saw the video we showed in the beginning, the older guy that descends from these people or refugees back then, and that show great solidarity and efforts to help the people, you know, get them out of the street when they fall out of the camp systems, when they get kicked out. So yes, there's a lot of solidarity, but also in the beginning, especially on Gran Canaria, there were a lot of people from low income areas that were organizing protests against the hotels being filled with refugees, and yeah, this is also, the other side was also going on. There was these conflicts are largely resolved now. From what I've been reading, there's a lot of integration work starting also to spread people across other islands, keep them busy, get them in touch with locals to yeah, also catch them before like having these mental breakdowns, which these camps are essentially built to create.
Mm. You part of answered the second question now a bit also, which is to Paola and Till. Can you tell a bit more about political and social reactions on the Canary Islands? How is the local government reacting? And is it a regular topic being discussed in local parliaments?
Paola, you want to go? Or? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't know too much about the local reaction of the local governments. What I've heard in the beginning of the 2021, that there were in the end of 2020, when this large spike of arrivals happened, that there was a lot of, you know, like legal battles between the local governments, lawyers, and so on, what to do with these people, because essentially once they step, somebody gets rescued and steps with their foot on the Canaries, they're essentially in Spain, so they shouldn't be kept there. They should be moved on to the to mainland, where the capacities might be a little bit yeah, might be better to cater for these people and house them and give them more dignified life. So yes, there's been some court rulings to move the people on, you know, according to their wishes. And yeah, in the beginning of July, a lot of people were moved from the islands, so the local NGOs can extend their structures, because more people will arrive this year, from what I've seen so far and what the prognoses are. And also what we've seen in the enclaves like Ceuta and Melilla, a lot of people try to swim over. I think this also should be mentioned, that this is a part of the problem where the EU pushes its borders to these former colonial, or yeah, still colonial places where people are kept in very bad conditions.
I would like to add that there have been a confrontation between the central Spanish government and the Canarian one, because the Canaries, with Andalusia and Andalusia and Extremadura, are the three poorest region in Spain. So NGOs, and also with the COVID crisis, has been even worse. So local NGOs has not even money to take care of local people, migrants or Canadian, whatever, but people who used to live in the island. Mm-hmm. So they have no any kind of they cannot support them. They have no structure to support to help, I don't know, 20,000 people who arrive. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So they were.
Yeah.
Go.
Another thing is that there is the unemployment rate of people, I think, below 25 years is almost 50% on the Canaries, and people arrive asking for work, etc. And this problem occurs that, you know, obviously no one's got work. A lot of young people I've seen and I've met helping refugees without even having knowing how to pay their rent and get the next food. So this is the problems that we mentioned, even though it's you know, we shouldn't draw the similarities between Lesbos, but there is the unemployment is very high, and yeah, I mean, you know, the Canaries will go extremely downhill if the EU doesn't step in and contribute and help solve these problems.
I would like, because due to the time, I would maybe go on with the next question because we have 2 more questions. If that's okay for you.
No, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is to all of you. Do you know whether Salvamento Marítimo would welcome civil NGOs to patrol in their ZAR zone, even though they shouldn't take Salvamento's job to rescue people in distress, monitor the zone and report boats?
I just heard the first part of your question.
Okay.
And I will
repeat it.
Maybe someone else could answer the second part.
Yeah, maybe you have to kick your flatmates off Netflix for a while. Your internet's getting pretty bad.
Yeah.
We were talking to Salvamento Marítimo, and we need to understand that these people, Salvamento Marítimo crew, are struggling for their jobs. So I don't think they would like to have a civil flag on the Canary Islands because they are fighting for their jobs. But I think they will say they will welcome maybe an aerial asset to help them on their jobs.
Okay. Did you understand the second part of the question as well, which you kind of answered already, but maybe genau, that there yeah, it says that maybe other civil NGOs could help to monitor the zone and report boats.
Claro, I think that will be very welcome. Like an aerial asset that they to go to the. I know that the NGOs have been talking to Spanish authorities to do that, no, and it's not gonna be easy. They are not gonna allow happily NGOs to operate on the Atlantic. Not just concerning the job of Salvamento Marítimo crew, also concerning the Spanish authorities, no? But I think that an aerial asset in this area is most than welcome and is really necessary because no one is looking down on this huge SAR zone. A lot of boats are missing. So I think will be very welcome even to Salvamento Marítimo people, this kind of help.
But you've also mentioned before that the rescue operations are being kind of militarized and the organization of it. So I think there's some pride in that military thing that, you know, they don't want civil NGOs to kind of also interfere with that. So yeah, I think what's essentially going to happen, unfortunately, is they will send more Frontex boats and their assets. But yeah, I mean, you know, this needs to be talked about individually with NGOs and Salvamento. Maybe there will be some connections in future where this is being made possible and discussed.
Yeah, we try. Well, people try, and we were talking about this situation also with Salvamento Marítimo. But I think in this area, it's not like the Central Med that you have a boat and you can go, you have a boat patrolling and you can reach. But in this huge area, where are you gonna be patrolling? Down there, like 24 hours from distance from the Canary Island? And where are you gonna, I don't think it's possible to do that, but I think that aerial asset will help a lot. It's not question about boat, because when a boat has been spotted, Salvamento Marítimo always go to pick up people, to rescue people. But the problem is no one is spotting those boats. So Salvamento just use their planes around the island, and just when a boat spot a fishing boat, spot a boat, migrant boat, they send the plane, but that's all. So I think that is really necessary to have if Salvamento, if the Spanish government doesn't want to, I think will be helped a lot that civil organization will come here. I think it's also difficult because you need a very good plane to go down there. It's not easy. It's not like Central Med that you go and come, but you need a very a plane with a lot of autonomy to do that. I know it's not easy, but let's see. Let's see what can. I don't think so far these actions now could happen, but I don't think that boats will help in this area at all.
Sorry, my internet broke again. And there's also another question to Fanni now, which is, if I understood her right, I think if I understood Fanni right, let's not forget to be able to imagine a world or situation in which Europe would actually respect human rights in a real sense. In fact, it's not Candyland, it's what should be normality, and actually on paper, it's already there. One gets so used that agencies from Europe misbehave immensely that one forgets to imagine a world in which European agencies actually also could behave properly.
Yeah, that's not a question. I mean,
that's not a question.
Mm-hmm. I understand the background of the critique, so to say, and I get what Dagmar is trying to say, and she's absolutely right. This should be the normal. But what I was trying to say is that this is not a virtue thing. Like, I don't think we should imagine this as like, it would be such a favor from European states to behave vis-a-vis third country nationals as they should. It's not, they wouldn't be doing a favor. They would be doing a service that is beneficial to either side. So I think if you talk about migration, there is a purposeful deception of what this actually is. And people try to mix up refugee movements with migration movements, and then they mix in this whole climate aspect, and then we can all be extremely scared. If we talk about refugees, then we don't have a choice, right? Non-refoulement is a cornerstone, non-derogable Kogan right, which we cannot derogate from, and as such, the right to seek asylum is not debated. Even though the access is hindered, the right is not debated yet. I think our problem is more when it comes to migration and the discourse, and I don't want to sound too annoying and technical at 9 p.m., but I think if we go very simple, then migration is beneficial to the migrant, it's beneficial to the receiving community, it's beneficial to the sending community, and we're racist if we act in any other way. And I think among the very good values of Europe, there is also racism, which is a very bad one, and we have to face it, and we have to work on this topic, keeping in mind that our policies are often, unfortunately, guided by a systemic kind of racism that we haven't managed to get out of our legislative DNA, so to say. That's all I was trying to come to.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we're kind of coming to an end now, having 2 more minutes. So from my side, I want to inform us that that you will find the movie and also the movie on Gran Canaria on the website of the Bildungswerk Berlin der Heinrich Böll Stiftung. And I also wanted to thank the 3 of you for this very intense and interesting conversation and discussion, which I think gave us not only a very clear view on what is happening on the Canaries since in the last years, but also and right now, but also I'm very happy that we got more deeply into the reasons why the situation is that way. Yeah, so special thanks to the 3 of you. And yeah, is there anything you'd like to say before we close?
Yeah, maybe one more thing. If you want to follow what's happening on Tenerife around the camp of Las Raíces, activists have gotten together and created some media output, and you can follow them through Apoyo Migrantes Tenerife, through their Instagram and several other channels, I think Twitter as well. And it's in Spanish, so for those of you who don't speak Spanish, yeah, some translation work to be done. I don't speak Spanish, so I'm doing that. So yeah, thanks to you, Johanna, as well for this. And I hope I didn't steal the last words. Paola, maybe you want to say something as well?
No, not really. Just it's nice that we can talk about what's going on the Canaries, and to realize that it's actually the same situation we have in other European places. You can say Lesbos, Lampedusa, as you said, also Ceuta and Melilla. And also it's nice I would like to say that Canaries, it's also like a colony, it's a Spanish colony. So it's to try to understand better the situation also of the people when they arrive there, and that the people living in the Canaries is that they cannot afford to have this amount of people there because there's no job, there's nothing to do. So please open the borders that doesn't exist between Canary and the mainland, between Ceuta and Melilla and the mainland, because we have even people swimming from Ceuta to Spain. It's crazy. We cannot allow to have this amount of death at sea, and we can prevent it easily.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, you're definitely right, and thank you. I think this is a good closure statement. Also, thank you so much, Fanni, for jumping in and your very valuable contributions. So,
thank you for inviting. Well, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah, and to all of you, have a nice evening, and also we can also send the link of the alarm phone report, which I think was also very good resume of the situation. So yeah, goodbye everyone, and thanks for contributing and taking part in the event. Bye.
Et Tenerife, ça fait beaucoup mal.
Camps don't essentially work.
We was there like 4 days and they transferred us to this hotel.
Having people living on the street isn't part of a solution.
I take the boat where they say they are going to Spain. And my idea was like, I just think maybe if you be in a boat like 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you are there. I wasn't have any idea of what I'm doing. Yeah, because I just traveled because of I want to run away from, I don't know, bad memories and bad things. We move. There's this orange boat come for us and take us to the boat until they take us to the port again. So then we was there for like 4 days and they transferred us to this hotel.
The island was pretty much in a crisis because there was thousands of people sleeping on ports, there was nowhere to house them, and at the same time we were in the middle of a COVID crisis, so we'd got 90-95% of hotels closed, but then we made contact with the Red Cross and we were the first hotel to offer its services.
Que Calviño tomen la oportunidad de aprovechar este espacio para ayudar a los migrantes y que no se queden en situación de calle.
The decision to open initially was also partly driven economically. We'd got a lot of staff in temporary unemployment, and at the same time as having a humanitarian crisis, the money from the Red Cross enabled us to bring our employees back to work. So that was very much a win-win situation and keep a company alive.
In this hotel, we have been here like a family. We have different nationalities, and even though sometimes we had a different way of traveling, because a lot of people, like when they come, they have the access to go to the mainland, and some of them also don't have the access.
The Red Cross, I think, were under a lot of pressure to move people out of the touristic areas. Gradually, hotels became closed as people got moved into camps, or as people got deported, or as people got moved to other islands. A lot of this was done very quickly and created a lot of fear. We would witness people leaving the hotel at 3-4 in the morning just because they were scared of what was going to happen and where they were going to go. I think that the challenge that we have to deal with is not where we are housing people, how we are housing people. I think we can learn from other places where we've had a huge influx of immigrants that camps don't essentially work.
Et Tenerife, ça fait beaucoup mal. Si, ça fait froid, pas de manger, pas dormir, et beaucoup mal là-bas. Après, on a décidé d'aller dans les rues.
And if they fall onto the street, they've got no food, they've got no money, they've got no water. Their only two choices are to beg or steal. Having people living on the street isn't part of a solution. So we'd got 11 Senegalese boys and a few Moroccan boys that had gone to the street or had been expelled from different centres or just didn't want to go to a camp because they thought they were going to get exported. So we allowed them to come back and we just took a private decision to help these people.
The Red Cross are gone, now we're still here because of Mama Antovia, Mama Africa and Kelvin. They help a lot of people who are still in the hotel and taking care of us, even though the bill, it's come from their budget, which is not easy.
Our approach has been, for as long as we are physically able to help the boys try to move on with their life. If the decision and the possibilities are to integrate people into society, let's work on it. And if expulsion is a reality, again, let's communicate and let's try to help people in a humane and in a safe way.